Rain had been falling since dawn, the kind of soft, steady drizzle that Portland seemed to breathe in and out like a habit. In a small apartment near Alberta Street, 12-year-old Sophie Delgado lay curled under a gray blanket, her face turned toward the window where raindrops blurred the skyline. The faint hum of passing cars mixed with the scent of toasted bread and the citrus perfume her mother always wore. She pressed a hand to her stomach and groaned dramatically. Rosa Delgado, her mother, stood beside the bed, still wearing her pink Sephora uniform and a concerned frown. "Sweetheart, again? You were fine last night." Her tone was gentle, but laced with the firmness Sophie knew too well. Sophie gave a small whimper. "It's my stomach, Mom. It feels like knives." "Maybe the cafeteria tacos," Rosa hesitated, watching her daughter's pale expression. She had seen plenty of customers, fake smiles, but she had never learned to see through her own child's act. "You probably just need rest," she sighed at last. "No phone, no tablet, okay? I'll make you some tea before I leave." "Thanks, Mom," Sophie murmured, keeping her face solemn until the bedroom door clicked shut. The moment Rosa's heels faded down the hallway, the solemn mask slipped away. Sophie sat up, eyes bright, the thrill of victory sparking inside her. She jumped out of bed, almost laughing. Her sick day had worked. No math test, no cafeteria noise, no pretending to like group projects. Just her and the rain. She poured herself a bowl of cereal, added more sugar than her mother would ever allow, and perched on the couch with a blanket draped around her shoulders. The TV murmured softly, an old sitcom rerun about people whose lives seemed simpler than hers. She scrolled through her tablet, checking messages from friends complaining about the same test she had just escaped. A message from her best friend popped up. "You're lucky, sophomore MS. Graves is in a mood today." Sophie grinned and typed back. Guess my stomach knew the weather forecast. Outside, the world moved at its usual pace. Buses sighing at stops, people in raincoats hurrying to work, umbrellas blooming like dark flowers on the sidewalks. Inside, the apartment felt wrapped in warmth and quiet rebellion. She opened the window, slightly. The cool, damp air touched her face. From the kitchen counter, her mother's note caught her eye. A neat square of paper weighted by a coffee mug. "There's soup in the fridge. Rest. I'll check on you at lunch." The handwriting, round and careful, tugged at a small corner of guilt she quickly pushed away. She flipped through channels again, landing on a nature documentary about wolves. The narrator's calm voice filled the living room. For a moment, Sophie pretended she was in one of those forests, free and unseen, instead of a kid pretending to be sick in an apartment. The hours passed slowly, each one stretching into the kind of peace she rarely noticed when life was rushing. She tried on her mother's reading glasses for fun, took selfies making exaggerated sick faces, then deleted them before Rosa could ever find out. By noon, the rain had thickened, tapping harder against the window like impatient fingers. The light outside dimmed to a pewter gray, and Sophie felt a sudden wave of contentment. She wrapped herself tighter in the blanket, chewing on the last of her cereal, humming softly along with the TV theme. For once, the world demanded nothing of her, no homework, no expectations, no tests. Just the rhythm of the rain and the comfort of home. She didn't know it yet, but that quiet, stolen morning, the one that began with a harmless lie, would be the last peaceful moment before everything changed. The rain hadn't stopped. By noon it had deepened into a gray curtain that swallowed the view outside Sophie's window. She'd stretched out on the couch with her blanket and half-finished cereal bowl when she heard the sound, a faint metallic scrape followed by the slow turn of a key in the front door. Her first thought was that she'd misheard, that the rain had tricked her ears. But then the lock clicked. Her body went rigid. Mom wasn't supposed to be home until 7. Sophie muted the TV and sat up, heart hammering so loudly she was sure whoever was on the other side could hear it. The door creaked open. She scrambled off the couch, pressing herself behind it, the blanket clutched in both hands like a shield. The hinges moaned. Boots stepped inside, wet from the rain. Sophie could see only the edge of a dark coat and the shimmer of an umbrella folding shut. Then came a woman's voice, low, impatient, whispering into a phone. Sophie's breath caught. The voice was familiar. Through the narrow space between the couch and the wall, she saw Patricia Alvarez, her mother's half-sister. She hadn't visited in weeks, not since she'd shown up late one night asking to borrow money and arguing with Rosa in the kitchen. Rosa never said what it was about, only that Patricia had troubles she couldn't stop feeding. Now Patricia was inside their home again, glancing around nervously as if every shadow might speak. Her black jacket glistened with rain. Her hair clung to her cheeks. Sophie watched her shut the door quietly and stand still listening. Then Patricia moved to the coat rack. Rose's light blue trench coat hung there, still damp from the morning commute. Patricia's hand slipped into her own bag and came out holding a small velvet pouch, deep red, tied with a gold string. She turned it over in her palm for a second, as if weighing it, then carefully slid it into Rose's coat pocket. Sophie's stomach dropped. She didn't know why, but something about the motion, secretive, deliberate, made her chest ache with cold. Patricia stepped back, pulled out her phone, and spoke in a hushed, urgent tone. "It's done," she said. "Tonight, bring the police. They'll find it." Sophie's fingers dug into the fabric of the couch. Bring the police? Her mind tried to make sense of it. Maybe Patricia was helping with something. Maybe she meant another house. But the certainty in her voice, the way she looked at the door before leaving, it wasn't right. Patricia pocketed the phone, exhaled shakily, and left as quickly as she had come, closing the door behind her with a careful click. For a long moment, there was only the sound of the rain again. Sophie didn't move. Her heart still pounded in her throat, each beat echoing against the silence of the apartment. She rose slowly, the floorboards cool under her bare feet, and approached the door. Through the peephole, she could see Patricia walking briskly down the hall, head lowered, disappearing into the gray stairwell light. Sophie turned back to the coat rack. The blue trench swayed gently where Patricia had touched it. She could still smell her mother's perfume, soft vanilla, mixed now with the sharp scent of rain and something else, something that made her uneasy. Her mind chased fragments of what she'd heard. Bring the police, they'll find it. Find what? She stepped closer, hand trembling as she reached into the pocket. Her fingers brushed the velvet pouch, smooth, heavy. For a second, she almost pulled it out, but fear made her freeze. Whatever it wasn't hers to touch. A shiver ran through her. The apartment, so warm and safe just an hour ago, now felt foreign, like someone had changed the air itself. Sophie backed away, her breath shallow, the sound of the rain suddenly too loud, too close. She sat down on the floor beside the couch, hugging her knees, staring at the coat that had become something dangerous. She wanted to call her mom, to tell her everything, but the words tangled before they could form. What if she'd misunderstood? What if this was just another grown-up problem she wasn't meant to see? She stayed like that for a long time, listening to the rain and the echo of Patricia's voice looping in her mind. It's done. Tonight, bring the police. They'll find it. Outside, thunder rolled faintly across the city. Inside, the small apartment felt heavier with each passing second, as if the walls themselves knew a secret Sophie wasn't supposed to uncover. For a long while, Sophie couldn't bring herself to move. The sound of the rain pressed against the windows like 1,000 whispered warnings. She stared at her mother's blue trench coat hanging by the door, the same coat Patricia had touched just minutes ago. Her pulse refused to slow. Curiosity fought with fear until, finally, curiosity won. She rose carefully, her bare feet silent on the wood floor. With one shaky breath, she reached into the pocket. Her fingers brushed soft velvet. She pulled out the small red pouch, its drawstring still tied neatly. It looked harmless, beautiful even. The kind of thing you'd find in a jewelry box, not inside someone's coat. For a second, she just stared at it, heart pounding. Then she loosened the string. A faint sparkle caught the dim light. Nestled inside was a diamond necklace, intricate and bright even under the gray afternoon sky. The stones were set in silver, each one framed by delicate filigree. But it wasn't the shimmer that froze Sophie's breath, it was the clasp. Tiny, but distinct, engraved with a cursive G intertwined with a star. She'd seen that symbol before. She grabbed her tablet, the one her mother thought she wasn't using. Fingers trembling, she searched. Portland jewelry store robbery G logo necklace. Headlines filled the screen. Goldstein and Company. Fine jewelry robbed. Thousands in diamonds missing. The article was dated 2 days ago. Sophie scrolled quickly, reading words that made her skin prickle. Security footage captured 2 masked suspects. Police are investigating leads, but no arrests have been made. The stolen pieces included a diamond necklace with the jeweler's trademark G-star clasp. Her throat went dry. She looked down at the necklace again, the same clasp, the same design. Her stomach twisted. Patricia had planted stolen jewelry in her mother's coat. For a moment, the room tilted. Rosa Delgado, who worked 6 days a week, who never took a thing that wasn't hers, who once walked back to a store because they'd given her the wrong change, was being set up. Sophie clutched the pouch to her chest and tried to breathe. Patricia's words echoed like thunder. It's done. Tonight. Bring the police. They'll find it. It wasn't just a visit. It was a trap. Panic surged through her. She paced the small living room, trying to think. Her reflection flashing across the TV screen. A scared little girl with wide eyes and rain-tangled hair. She wanted to call her mom, to scream for help. But what could she say? Hi, Mom. Your sister's framing you for a felony? No one would believe her. She was 12. 12 wasn't old enough to fix this, but 12 was old enough to try. She laid the necklace on the table, careful not to smudge it with fingerprints, and studied it. Her mind worked fast, the way it always did when solving puzzles in science class. The police would come tonight. They'd find the necklace in her mom's coat, unless she did something. Think. Sophie. Think. She remembered the little camera her mom's friend had installed in the door peephole, a safety gadget Rosa bought after someone vandalized the mailboxes in their building. It automatically saved short video clips whenever motion was detected. If the camera had caught Patricia entering, there'd be proof. Hope flickered inside her like a match struck in the dark. She turned to the front door, staring at the tiny black lens in the center. It looked so ordinary, so small, yet right now it might hold everything. But even if she found footage, she'd need to protect it. She imagined the police coming, searching the apartment, taking things. What if they took her mom's laptop too? Her chest tightened, but beneath the fear something steadier began to grow, a quiet certainty. Patricia had played a dangerous game, but Sophie wasn't going to let her mother take the fall. She retied the pouch and slipped it back into the coat pocket exactly as she'd found it. Then she sat down at the table, pulled her tablet closer, and began to plan. For the first time that day, she wasn't pretending. She wasn't playing sick or hiding from trouble. She was facing it, sharp, real, and terrifying. And she made herself a promise. Before anyone else knocked on that door, she would have proof. Sophie sat cross-legged at the kitchen table, the red velvet pouch lying open beside her tablet. The necklace caught every scrap of gray daylight that filtered through the window, scattering it across the linoleum in trembling shapes. Her hand shook as she held up her mother's old phone and snapped picture after picture. Close-ups of the clasp, the pattern of the stones, the faint engraving that proved it came from Goldstein and Company. She uploaded each one to a hidden folder on her tablet, labeling them with the date and time. Her mind buzzed louder than the rain outside. If the police came tonight, she had maybe, 6, 7 hours? She had to move faster than grown-ups, who had no reason to believe her. She typed Aaron Goldstein, Jewelry, Portland, into the search bar. A website appeared, elegant and understated. The kind of place her mom would walk past and sigh over, but never enter. The header showed a smiling man in his 50s, silver-rimmed glasses and kind eyes. Aaron Goldstein, Master Jeweler. The company's slogan read, "Crafting Brilliance since 1974. Sophie scrolled past photos of diamond rings until a link at the bottom caught her eye. Recent news coverage. She clicked, and there it was again. The same headline from earlier, with an updated statement from the Portland PD. Police continue to investigate last week's burglary at Goldstein and Company. Authorities are following an anonymous tip regarding the whereabouts of missing jewelry. An anonymous tip. Her stomach lurched. Patricia's words came back to her. Sharp and certain. Tonight, bring the police. Sophie's fingers hovered over the screen. Then an idea hit her. She opened her school messaging app, something her mom thought she only used for homework updates, and searched for a name. Lily Goldstein. Lily was a quiet girl from her homeroom, good at art, always sketching on the edges of her notebooks. They'd sat together during a field trip last month and talked about dogs. Sophie had barely remembered that her dad owned a jewelry store. Until now, her thumbs flew across the keyboard. "Hey, Lily. It's Sophie. Are you okay? I saw the news about your dad's store." A few minutes passed. The typing bubble appeared. "Hey, sophomore. Yeah, kinda rough. Dad's really stressed. The police think they might have a lead, though." Sophie's pulse kicked. "A lead? What kind?" Another pause. Then Lily's reply popped up. Some anonymous tip came in. They said one of the stolen things might be hidden at some lady's apartment. Someone named Rosa Delgado? They're doing a search tonight. Sophie stared at the message until the letters blurred. Her mother's name looked wrong there, black and digital and deadly. For a second, she couldn't breathe. She typed, deleted. Typed again. "That's my mom." A long silence. Then Lily wrote, "What? Oh my God. Soph, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. Maybe it's just a mix-up?" Sophie didn't answer. She couldn't. She turned off the screen and pressed her forehead to her knees, trying to make the world stop spinning. It didn't. The clock on the wall ticked louder. Every second slicing into the time she had left. When she finally lifted her head, her eyes were dry. She opened her mother's laptop and went straight to the call history. Patricia's number appeared twice in the last week, both short calls, both during Rose's lunch break. Her mother hadn't mentioned them. Why would she? Patricia was family. Family didn't need explanations. Except now, family meant danger. Sophie's gaze flicked toward the door, to the tiny peephole camera glinting faintly above the chain lock. Rosa's friend from work, Mr. Ramirez, had installed it last month after someone had stolen packages from the hallway. It recorded 10-second clips whenever it sensed motion. Rosa had joked it made them feel like detectives. Detectives. A jolt of hope surged through Sophie, so suddenly it made her dizzy. If the camera worked. Then somewhere inside her mom's laptop, or maybe the little memory card inside that device, was proof. Real proof that Patricia had been here. She jumped up and started searching drawers for the manual. Her movements quick and clumsy. She found a small plastic case labeled Peephole Cam, HD, and flipped it open. Inside was a micro SD card slot. The card was still there. She pulled it out, heart pounding. The label read Rec. NOV 2025. If she could view the footage and save it before anyone else came, she might have a chance. Outside, sirens wailed faintly somewhere downtown. Sophie froze, imagining police cars. Flashlights, the knock on the door that could destroy everything. She looked at the clock again. 1:42 p.m. By evening they'd be here. Her fingers tightened around the tiny card like it was the only thing keeping her world from collapsing. Then she whispered almost to herself, "Okay, Patricia, let's see what you did." And with that, she sat down at the computer, every nerve in her body electric, every minute ticking louder. As the storm outside gathered its strength, Sophie's fingers trembled as she slid the tiny memory card into the laptop slot. The loading icon spun for what felt like forever before a folder appeared. Recordings, November 2025. Her heart pounded in her ears as she double-clicked. A list of short clips appeared, each labeled with timestamps. She scrolled until one caught her eye. 12:27 p.m. Her throat went dry. That was exactly when Patricia had come in. She clicked the file. The video opened with a distorted view from the peephole. Wide-angled, slightly warped, but clear enough to make her stomach twist. The hallway was empty for a moment. Then Patricia appeared, her face pale and drawn, glancing left and right before inserting a key into the lock. Sophie leaned closer, heart hammering. The door opened. Patricia hesitated on the threshold, as if making sure no one was home, then slipped inside, her black handbag slung over one shoulder. The footage cut off, then resumed as Patricia stepped out again a few minutes later. She was on the phone, speaking quickly, her expression hard to read, but her tone sharp even through the muffled audio. Sophie caught only fragments. "Tonight, she won't know. Police!" the clip ended. Sophie sat back, her breath shaky. There it was, everything. The proof she needed. She replayed the footage twice more, memorizing every detail, the timestamp, the reflection in the door glass, the way Patricia's bag hung low on her right side. Then she took screenshots. One as Patricia entered, one as she left, one of the timestamp overlay. She saved them all into a new folder on the desktop and named it simply Proof. For the first time all day, the fear in her chest gave way to something steadier, focus. She'd watched enough detective shows with her mom to know evidence mattered more than words. And now she had it, but questions still spun in her mind. Why would Patricia do this? Why risk everything to frame her own sister? Sophie opened a new browser tab and typed Patricia Alvarez Facebook. The profile came up instantly, public, full of filtered selfies and check-ins. She scrolled through the posts, eyes scanning fast. A week ago, Patricia had posted a photo from a diner booth, her smiling across from a man Sophie didn't recognize. Tattoos covered his forearms, intricate black designs that climbed up toward his elbows. The caption read, "Dinner with my favorite troublemaker." Sophie frowned. She zoomed in on the man's tattoos. One of them, a snake coiled around a dagger, looked oddly familiar. She opened the robbery article again and reread a section she'd skipped earlier. Witnesses reported seeing a man with visible arm tattoos, including a snake design, fleeing the scene. Her pulse quickened. She clicked on his profile, Danny Cortez. His About page said, self-employed, Portland area. No job listed. His photos showed him posing next to a black pickup truck, flashing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Curiosity led her to type his name into Google. Within seconds, headlines appeared. Danny Cortez arrested in 2018 for burglary and fraud. Local man sentenced, later released on probation. The articles were short but clear enough. Same tattoos, same face. Sophie's stomach tightened. Danny Cortez was Patricia's boyfriend and a convicted thief. The pieces locked into place with terrifying precision. Patricia must have gotten the stolen jewelry from him. Maybe she'd promised to hide it. Maybe she was helping him cover his tracks. And framing Rosa, the sister who always had her life together, would be the perfect distraction. Sophie rubbed her forehead, trying to calm the swirl of thoughts. This wasn't a TV mystery, this was real. If she didn't do something, her mother could be arrested tonight. She opened the proof folder again and added everything she'd found. The screenshots from the video, the links to Danny's criminal record. even photos from Patricia's page showing her with him. Then she inserted a flash drive and copied it all over, watching the progress bar inch forward. When it finished, she ejected the drive and hid it under the rug near the hallway cabinet, the same spot where her mom once kept spare cash. The rain outside had turned heavier, drumming against the window like a countdown clock. She checked the time, almost 4. Rosa would be home in a few hours, and the police would follow not long after. Sophie stared at the blue coat, still hanging by the door, its pockets hiding the velvet pouch like a secret ready to explode. She pressed her palms against the table, steadying herself. She had proof now, but proof meant nothing if no one saw it in time. Her next move would decide everything. Sophie stood in the middle of the small living room, the kind of stillness that comes when fear gives way to clarity. The necklace gleamed faintly from the table, fragile and dangerous, like a spark waiting to ignite. She stared at it for a long moment before whispering to herself, "You're not winning, Patricia." Then she began to move. Her mother's old handbag, Patricia's handbag now, was still in the hall closet, shoved behind a box of holiday decorations. Patricia had forgotten it weeks ago after borrowing Rosa's car and never coming back for the bag. Sophie had seen it there a dozen times, ignored it, thought of it as just another piece of clutter, but now it felt like an opportunity. She pulled it out carefully. It was a black leather tote with worn handles and a faded logo on the side. The lining still smelled faintly of Patricia's perfume, cheap lilac and cigarette smoke. Sophie hesitated for half a heartbeat before slipping the red velvet pouch inside, tucking it deep into the inner pocket. If the police searched the apartment tonight, they wouldn't find the necklace in her mother's coat. They'd find it in something that actually belonged to Patricia. It wasn't a lie, she told herself. It was justice, rearranged into its rightful place. She zipped the handbag shut and set it back where it had been, exactly as before. Then she turned to the laptop. The folder, labeled Proof, glowed on the desktop like a heartbeat. She inserted a small silver flash drive and copied everything. The video footage, the screenshots, the links to Danny Cortez's record, the photos of Patricia. Progress bar, creeping forward, minute by minute. 21%, 47%, 89%. Done. Sophie ejected the drive and slipped it into her pocket, her fingers gripping the cool metal tightly. For the first time all day, she wasn't just scared. She was certain. She needed to make sure her mother didn't accidentally walk into Patricia's trap. Grabbing the cordless phone from the kitchen counter, she dialed Rosa's number at Sephora. Her hand shook as she pressed the buttons. It rang twice before her mother's familiar voice answered, muffled under the hum of background chatter. "Hi, sweetheart. How's my patient?" Sophie forced her voice to sound weak, just the way she had that morning. "Hey, Mom. I'm okay. Just resting." "That's good." Rosa's tone softened with relief. "I'll bring soup when I get home. Maybe that'll fix that stomach of yours." Sophie smiled faintly, her chest tightening with guilt. "Thanks, Mom." She hesitated, then asked, "Are you busy tonight?" "Pretty slow, actually," Rosa replied. "But I was thinking Patricia called earlier this week. Said she might need help moving some things. Maybe I'll stop by her place this weekend, check on her." She sounded tired. Sophie's blood turned cold. You're going to her house?" "Not tonight, honey. This weekend." "Why?" "Nothing," Sophie said quickly, forcing her tone calm. "Just she hasn't been nice lately." Rosa laughed softly, the kind of sound that always made Sophie feel safe. "I know, but she's still family." Sophie swallowed hard. "Yeah, still family." They said goodbye, and Sophie hung up slowly, her reflection faint in the window glass. Outside, the rain had grown heavier, running down in sheets. The streetlights flickered, casting shifting shadows through the curtains. She crouched by the hallway rug, lifted one corner, and hid the flash drive beneath it, pressing it flat into the dust. It wasn't much, but it was safe. If the police took the laptop, they wouldn't have everything. Her heart raced as thunder rolled somewhere beyond the skyline. She stood, staring at the apartment, the same one she'd always known, now filled with secrets. Rosa's coat hung where it always did. The scent of her mother's perfume lingered in the air, mingling with the dampness from outside. Sophie felt small and older at the same time, her childhood shrinking behind her like the space between breaths. She whispered into the silence, "I'll protect you, Mom." Then she turned off the lights in the living room and sat by the window, watching rain lash against the glass. The reflection of the streetlight trembled in each droplet, tiny explosions of gold and silver. In the distance, a siren wailed faintly, just another ordinary sound on a Portland night. But to Sophie, it felt like a countdown. The storm outside matched the one inside her, growing stronger, unstoppable. For the first time in her life, she wasn't waiting for someone else to fix things. She was the one making the move. By the time the rain slowed to a cold drizzle, the sky outside had deepened to bruised blue. Streetlights flickered to life across the neighborhood, halos of gold shimmering through the mist. Sophie sat curled on the couch, her arms wrapped around her knees, staring at the clock. The rhythmic tick felt like footsteps approaching, steady, unstoppable. At exactly 7:14 p.m., she heard the sound she'd been dreading, a firm knock on the door. 3 times. Deliberate. Not her mother's knock. Her heart froze. She peeked through the peephole and saw 2 uniformed police officers standing in the hallway, rain dripping from their coats. Between them stood a woman in plain clothes, mid-40s, calm but alert, her dark hair pulled back in a tight bun. A badge hung from her neck. Detective Rachel Park. Sophie's breath caught. Before she could decide what to do, keys jangled down the hall, and the familiar click of her mother's heels echoed closer. Rosa Delgado rounded the corner, shopping bag in hand, umbrella still dripping. She blinked in confusion as she saw the officers waiting by the door. "Can I help you?" Rosa asked, her voice uncertain. "Mrs. Delgado," the detective said, polite but firm. "I'm Detective Park with the Portland Police Bureau. We have a search warrant for your residence. May we come in?" Rosa's face went pale. "Search warrant? There must be some mistake. What's this about?" Detective Park exchanged a brief glance with one of the officers, then answered evenly. "We received information regarding stolen property linked to a recent robbery. We'll explain everything in a moment." Rosa looked stunned, clutching her bag tighter. This can't be happening. Sophie rose slowly from the couch. "Mom!" The detective gave her a small nod, acknowledging her presence, but not yet addressing her. "Please stay back. Sweetheart, we just need to look around." Rosa hesitated, then stepped aside. "Fine. You can search. I have nothing to hide." The officers entered, wiping their boots on the mat. Professional and quiet, they began methodically moving through the small apartment, one heading to the bedroom, the other to the kitchen. Drawers opened. Doors creaked. Hangers scraped. The normal sounds of home became alien, intrusive. Rosa stood by the wall, watching them with wide eyes. "Detective, please, this is ridiculous. I'm a store clerk. I've never even—" Detective Park raised a hand gently. "I understand, Mrs. Delgado. We're just following up on a lead." Sophie tried to breathe evenly, but every sound made her flinch. She could hear her own heartbeat, fast and heavy, pulsing in her ears. The officer in the bedroom called out, "Closet clear." The other opened kitchen cabinets, rifled through drawers, checked under the sink. Then both moved toward the living room, where Rosa's coat hung by the door. Rosa pressed a hand to her chest. "You can't be serious. Are you really going through my things?" Detective Park's tone was calm, almost kind. "It's procedure, ma'am. I promise we'll be careful." Sophie's throat went dry. She stood frozen. watching as one officer reached for the blue trench coat, the one that had nearly destroyed them both. He slipped his hand into the pockets, felt around, and pulled it inside out. Nothing. He looked at his partner and shook his head. Empty. Rosa exhaled sharply, part relief, part disbelief. See? I told you. I didn't take anything. But the search wasn't over. The second officer turned toward the hall closet. We should check any bags or purses, too. Sophie's pulse spiked. The old handbag, Patricia's handbag, was still there. The officer reached up, pulled it down from the shelf, and unzipped it. The sound of the zipper cutting through the silence was almost unbearable. Inside, among a few faded receipts and old gum wrappers, lay the red velvet pouch. The officer froze, then lifted it out carefully. Detective, you'll want to see this. The room seemed to stop breathing. Rosa's eyes widened as she stepped forward. What is that? Detective Park opened the pouch slowly, her expression unreadable. When the diamonds caught the light, Rosa gasped. That's not mine. I swear, I've never seen that before. The officers exchanged looks, tension thick in the air. Sophie felt the floor tilt beneath her. The plan had worked, but seeing her mother's face, pale and terrified, twisted her insides with guilt. Detective Park studied the necklace, then looked up. Her gaze landed on Sophie. It wasn't a glare nor an accusation, it was something else. Curious, measuring. Sophie tried to hold her composure, but her lips trembled. There was something in her eyes she couldn't hide. Fear, yes, but also something sharper, knowledge. Detective Park seemed to notice. Her brow furrowed just slightly. She turned to Rosa. Mrs. Delgado, I'll need you to sit down for a moment. Rosa's voice broke. You don't believe I did this, do you? I haven't drawn any conclusions, the detective said softly, but we're going to sort this out. I promise. Then she looked at Sophie again, longer this time, as if trying to read the story written behind those wide brown eyes. Sophie looked down quickly, her fingers digging into the hem of her sweater. She couldn't tell if she was winning or losing anymore. The truth sat heavy between them, glowing from inside that velvet pouch, waiting for someone to find it. Outside, thunder rolled low across the city. The lights flickered once, then steadied. Detective Park closed the pouch and slipped it into an evidence bag. Let's take this down to the station, she said quietly, and as the officers began to gather their things. Sophie knew the moment she'd been fighting toward all day had finally arrived. The storm had broken, and whatever came next would change everything. Detective Rachel Park guided Sophie gently toward the small dining table, pulling out a chair for her. The storm outside had quieted, leaving behind only the soft hiss of drizzle against the windows. Rosa sat on the couch, silent, her hands clasped tightly in her lap as one of the officers spoke to her in low tones. The apartment that had once felt so warm now felt stripped bare, every sound magnified, every breath deliberate. Rachel took a seat across from Sophie. Her voice was calm, steady, but there was a sharp intelligence in her gaze. Sophie, I need you to tell me something. And I need you to be completely honest, okay? No one's angry with you. We just want the truth. Sophie nodded, her throat dry. When we found the jewelry, you looked worried, almost like you knew it was there. Did you? The words hung between them, heavy and quiet. Sophie looked down at her hands, twisting her fingers together. She could lie, say she didn't know anything, let things unfold, stay safe. But the image of her mother's face when they found the pouch wouldn't leave her mind. Fear, confusion, heartbreak. Rosa didn't deserve this. Her voice trembled. It wasn't my mom. Detective Park tilted her head slightly. Go on. Sophie took a deep breath. Then let the story pour out. The knock at noon. Patricia entering with the black handbag, the way she whispered into her phone. Bring the police tonight. Sophie's eyes welled with tears as she described everything, her words tumbling over each other. She told her about the peephole camera, the video, the flash drive hidden under the rug, even about Danny Cortez and the tattoos she'd matched from the news. Rachel listened without interrupting, her expression unreadable. The officers had paused their movements, exchanging glances, their skepticism shifting slowly into focus. When Sophie finally stopped talking, the silence was thick enough to feel. Then Rachel asked softly, "You said there's a video?" Sophie nodded, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. "On my mom's laptop. It shows her, Patricia, coming in today. 12:27 p.m. Can you show me?" Sophie rose, her legs shaking, and walked to the small desk by the window. She opened the laptop, the familiar click of the keyboard sounding impossibly loud. Rachel came to stand beside her as Sophie opened the proof folder and double-clicked the video file. The screen came to life. The fisheye view of the hallway, Patricia Alvarez glancing around before unlocking the door and stepping inside. The timestamp glowed, clearly in the corner. Rachel leaned closer, eyes narrowing. The clip continued, Patricia exiting minutes later, speaking on the phone, her tone hard, her movements quick. When the footage ended, no one spoke for several seconds. One of the officers broke the silence. "That's pretty clear." Rachel exhaled slowly. She used a key. "Mrs. Delgado, your sister had access to your apartment." Rosa looked up, stunned. "Yes, I gave her a spare key a few months ago, for emergencies. But oh my God!" She buried her face in her hands. "I thought she cared about us." Rachel nodded once, decisive now. She turned to her partner. "Get the tech unit on the line. We need a team to verify this footage immediately and secure a secondary warrant for Patricia Alvarez. I want her in custody tonight." The officer stepped aside, speaking into his radio. Rachel turned back to Sophie, her tone softer again. "You did the right thing, Sophie. You were very brave." Tears slipped down Sophie's cheeks. "I just didn't want them to take her away." Rosa stood then, crossing the room in 3 long steps. She pulled Sophie into her arms, holding her so tightly it almost hurt. "Mi cielo," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You saved me." Sophie buried her face in her mother's shoulder, trembling with both exhaustion and relief. For the first time since morning, she let herself cry. The weight she'd carried, the fear, the guilt, finally cracked open and poured out. Rachel watched them quietly, something softening in her expression. "We'll take it from here," she said gently. "But I want you both to stay home tonight. Lock the door. We'll call when we have her." Rosa looked up, her eyes red but steady. "Thank you, Detective." Rachel gave a small, firm nod, then gestured for her team to pack up. The necklace, now sealed in an evidence bag, glinted once under the ceiling light before disappearing into the detective's case. As the officers stepped out into the night, Rosa and Sophie stood together in the doorway, watching the flashing lights fade down the wet street. Sophie whispered, "Do you think they'll really find her?" Rosa brushed a strand of hair from her daughter's face. "They will. And even if they didn't, we'd still have the truth. That's what matters." Sophie nodded, her chest rising with the first deep breath she'd taken all day. Behind them, the apartment was quiet again. The same walls, the same rain, but everything had changed. The truth, frightening and powerful, had found its way into the light, and for the first time, justice didn't feel like something that happened to them. It felt like something they had fought for. The call came just after midnight. Rosa and Sophie had barely managed to fall asleep when the phone buzzed on the nightstand. Rosa groggily reached for it, her heart already racing. On the other end, Detective Rachel Park's calm voice broke the silence. "Mrs. Delgado," she said, "we have them in custody." Rosa sat up, clutching the blanket. "You found Patricia?" "And Danny Cortez," the detective confirmed. We executed the warrant an hour ago. Your sister was at his apartment. We recovered several items from the Goldstein robbery, including the necklace. They match serial records from the store's catalog exactly. Both have confessed. Rosa didn't answer right away. She stared into the darkness, the words sinking in. Her hand trembled slightly as she whispered, "Thank you." Rachel's tone softened. "You and your daughter did more than anyone expected. You should both be proud. I'll be by tomorrow to finalize the statement." When the call ended, Rosa sat still, eyes unfocused. Sophie, half awake beside her, murmured, "Mom? What happened?" Rosa turned toward her, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's forehead. "They found her, Carino. It's over." Sophie blinked. "Aunt Patricia?" "Yes," Rosa said quietly. "And her boyfriend." She took a long breath. "They confessed." Sophie didn't speak. She simply wrapped her arms around her mother, and for a while neither of them moved. The apartment felt different now. Still small, still cluttered, but no longer suffocating. The fear that had hung in every corner was gone. What remained was something heavier, quieter, the ache of betrayal. The next morning, Portland was awash in pale winter light. News traveled quickly. By noon, Rosa's phone was flooded with messages from coworkers, neighbors, even customers from the mall. One link repeated again and again, an article on the Oregon Sentinel website. 12-year-old Portland girl helps police crack jewelry theft case. A photo accompanied the story. Sophie, shy-eyed, wearing her rain jacket, standing beside Detective Park outside the precinct. Rosa hadn't even noticed when the photographer snapped it the night before. The caption read, "Quick thinking and bravery by a local student helped police recover stolen property and clear her mother of false accusations." At first, Rosa didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The pride swelled inside her, but so did the sadness. The face of her sister haunted every headline, every mention of the case. That afternoon, Detective Park stopped by. The rain had returned, soft and steady. She entered the apartment with a gentle smile, still wearing her beige trench coat. "I hope I'm not intruding," she said. "Not at all," Rosa replied, ushering her in. "Please." Rachel sat down at the kitchen table, setting a folder on the surface. "It's official." Both Patricia and Danny gave full statements. Danny admitted to stealing the jewelry from Goldstein's store and giving it to your sister to hide. Patricia confessed she planted it here, hoping you'd take the fall. Rosa's voice cracked. "Why would she do that? We grew up together. I gave her everything I could." Rachel hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "Sometimes jealousy runs deeper than we realize. Patricia said she thought you had the life she deserved. The job, the stability, the daughter." Rosa's eyes welled up. "I would have helped her. If she'd just asked." "I believe you," Rachel said softly. "But forgiveness, if it ever comes, will take time. You don't owe her anything right now except honesty with yourself." Sophie listened quietly from the couch. She wasn't sure what forgiveness meant yet, only that she didn't hate Patricia the way she expected to. She just felt tired. Rachel turned to her and smiled gently. "You did something extraordinary, Sophie. Most adults wouldn't have handled it half as well." Sophie shrugged, cheeks coloring. "I just wanted to help my mom. That's what makes it remarkable." Rosa reached over and squeezed her daughter's hand. "She's always been brave. I just never imagined how much." As Rachel prepared to leave, she paused by the door. "You know," she said, "the Goldsteins wanted me to tell you both something. They're donating part of the recovered jewelry's insurance payout to a local scholarship fund. They want to name it after Sophie." Sophie's eyes widened. "After me?" Rachel smiled. "After you." When the detective left, the apartment fell quiet again, except for the steady patter of rain against the windows. Rosa sat by the window, watching the city blur into silver streaks. Sophie joined her, resting her head on her mother's shoulder. For the first time in days, Rosa let herself breathe. The nightmare was over, but the emptiness left by her sister's betrayal remained, a hollow space she didn't know how to fill. Yet when she looked at Sophie, she felt something shift. Maybe that hollow wasn't meant to be filled with forgiveness just yet, but with love, with patience, with rebuilding. Outside, a delivery truck rumbled past. Life was moving on. The storm had passed, leaving behind puddles that reflected a softer sky. Rosa whispered, "You saved us." "Sophie." Her daughter smiled faintly. "No, Mom. We saved each other." And for the first time since that terrible day, Rosa believed it. Spring came slowly to Portland that year. The rain still lingered most mornings, but it felt gentler now, softer, as though the city itself was learning how to breathe again. In the Delgado apartment, life had settled into a new rhythm. The fear that once haunted its corners was gone, replaced by something quieter: recovery. 3 months had passed since Patricia's arrest. Rosa still worked long shifts at the mall, but she carried herself differently now, less hurried, less afraid of shadows. Sophie had started middle school in March, her backpack heavier, her smile brighter. She joined the student paper, helped in the library, and had a new fascination with mysteries and justice. Detective Rachel Park had come once to speak to her class about truth and courage. Sophie had sat in the front row, her hands folded, listening like someone who already knew what it meant to face the impossible and win. But at home, not everything was healed. Every few weeks, an envelope arrived in the mail. Neat handwriting. Return address: Oregon Correctional Institution for Women. Patricia Alvarez. Rosa kept the letters in a drawer, unopened at first. Eventually, curiosity or compassion, she wasn't sure which, made her open one. The words were full of sorrow. Patricia apologized over and over. Said she didn't know why she had done it, that she'd been desperate, angry, jealous. She wrote that Danny had promised her a way out of debt, a better life, that she hadn't meant for things to go so far. In another letter, she asked if Rosa and Sophie could ever forgive her. Rosa read them all in silence, sitting by the kitchen table after work, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound. She didn't cry. She didn't respond. The wounds were still too raw, the trust too deeply broken. But she didn't throw the letters away either. They stayed stacked neatly in the drawer, as if waiting for a day when she might be ready to read them again without pain. Sophie knew about the letters, but never asked to read them. Once, she found her mother sitting quietly by the window, one letter folded in her lap. "Do you think she means it?" Sophie asked softly. Rosa hesitated. Maybe regret is the only thing she has left. Sophie nodded, thoughtful beyond her years. Regret isn't the same as sorry. Rosa looked at her daughter, this small, fierce girl who had faced down fear and chosen truth. "No," she said gently, "it isn't." A few weeks later, they received an invitation from Aaron Goldstein, the owner of the jewelry store. His letter was formal but kind. He wanted to thank Sophie personally. When they arrived downtown on a rare sunny afternoon, the store gleamed like something out of a dream. Tall glass windows, brass handles polished to a shine. Aaron, a silver-haired man with kind eyes, greeted them warmly. "You must be the Delgados," he said, "and this must be our hero." Sophie blushed. "I'm not really a hero." Aaron chuckled. "That's exactly what heroes say." He led them to a glass display case and unlocked it. Inside lay rows of necklaces and bracelets that sparkled under the light. He reached in and lifted a small box, handing it to Sophie. Inside was a delicate silver pendant shaped like a key. "For the girl who unlocked the truth," he said. Sophie's eyes filled with tears. She glanced at her mother, who nodded, smiling softly through her own. Aaron placed a hand over his heart. "You reminded me that honesty still wins, even when the odds don't. They left the store with the pendant around Sophie's neck, the metal warm against her skin. Outside, the clouds had begun to roll in again. Not dark, just soft, the way Portland always was before a gentle rain. Weeks later came the sentencing. The courtroom smelled faintly of polish and paper. Sophie sat beside her mother in the second row, feet not quite touching the floor. Patricia sat across the room in handcuffs, eyes red, shoulders bowed. She looked older somehow, smaller. Danny sat beside her, his expression flat, resigned. The judge's voice echoed through the chamber as he read the verdicts. 14 years for Danny Cortez, 6 years for Patricia Alvarez. Rosa listened silently, hands clasped tight around Sophie's. When the gavel struck, the sound was final, not cruel but certain. Justice had spoken. As they stood to leave, Sophie looked toward Detective Park, seated at the side. Rachel caught her gaze and gave a single nod, not one of authority, but of quiet respect. Sophie returned it. And for a brief second, the chaos of everything they'd survived seemed to fall away. Outside the courthouse, the rain had started again, gentle and steady. Rosa and Sophie walked home under a single umbrella, the kind they'd once shared on her walk to school. They didn't talk much. There wasn't much left to say. That night, Sophie sat by her bedroom window, the pendant resting against her collarbone. Below, the city lights shimmered in the rain. She pressed her fingertips to the cold glass and whispered softly, not to anyone in particular. Some people lie to survive. Others tell the truth to save. The words hung in the air like a promise, fragile, luminous. From the other room, she heard her mother humming, a tune from when Sophie was small. The sound carried through the apartment, warm and steady, weaving through the patter of the rain. Sophie smiled faintly and leaned her head against the window pane. Outside, the storm moved on, leaving ripples of light across the wet streets, the kind of night where everything felt washed clean, ready for something new. And in that quiet, rain-soft glow, the story of Rosa and Sophie Delgado didn't end. It simply turned the page, from survival to peace, from fear to truth. A small silver key glinted in the lamplight, catching the reflection of a girl who had unlocked far more than anyone could see. Not just the truth, but her own strength,